You've been very generous with your time, Mr. Warren. Shown me things that I never would have seen.
20 weird facts about Miss Potter you didn't know. Ever wonder how a quiet period drama about children's books hides one of the saddest real-life love stories in literary history? A film that looks gentle, pastel-colored, and comforting, but is built on loneliness, creative isolation, emotional repression, and a romance that ended far too soon. This is not just a biopic. This is not just a children's story. This is the story of a woman who changed literature forever while living most of her life unseen, unheard, and emotionally constrained. This is the story of imagination as survival. Here are 20 subtle, heartbreaking, and unbelievable facts about Miss Potter 2006, and stay till the end because the final fact explains why Beatrix Potter's greatest love story isn't the one most people remember. Let's begin. 1. Beatrix Potter was considered a failed woman before she was a success. Before fame, Beatrix Potter was viewed as a disappointment. She was unmarried, financially dependent, quietly rebellious. In Victorian England, this was failure. Women were expected to marry well, obey family structure, abandon personal ambition. Beatrix did none of that. Her scientific curiosity, artistic obsession, and independence were discouraged, especially by her parents. Miss Potter doesn't dramatize this with cruelty. It shows it through silence. Disapproval doesn't shout, it suffocates. 2. The film uses animation to represent emotional escape, not fantasy. The animated sequences aren't cute decoration, they're survival mechanisms. When Beatrix retreats into her drawings, the world softens, rules fade, judgment disappears. Director Chris Noonan used animation not to entertain, but to visualize inner refuge. These characters aren't imaginary friends, they're safe spaces. In a life where emotional expression was restricted, imagination became freedom. That's why the animation feels intimate, not whimsical. 3. Renee Zellweger played Beatrix as emotionally guarded on purpose. Casting Renee Zellweger surprised many audiences. Beatrix Potter wasn't bubbly, she wasn't charming in the traditional sense. Zellweger played her restrained, awkward, often uncomfortable. Why? Because Beatrix had learned to minimize herself. Years of parental control and social expectation taught her, don't speak too loudly, don't demand attention, don't desire openly. That repression makes her quiet joy and quiet grief far more powerful. Emotion isn't absent, it's contained. 4. Norman Warren wasn't just a love interest, he was her first ally. Norman Warren wasn't simply romantic, he was revolutionary. For the first time, someone took Beatrix's work seriously, valued her business instincts, encouraged her independence. Their relationship wasn't just emotional, it was collaborative. Warren treated Beatrix as an artist, a partner, a decision-maker. That validation changed her life, which makes what happened next even more devastating. 5. Beatrix Potter's parents opposed her engagement for one reason: control. Beatrix Potter's parents didn't object to Norman Warren because he was cruel, they objected because he was ordinary. In Victorian society, marriage wasn't about love, it was about status, control, and preservation of family authority. Norman was a publisher, not wealthy enough, not aristocratic, not controllable. More importantly, he encouraged Beatrix to make her own decisions. That independence terrified her parents. The film shows this conflict quietly, through looks, pauses, unspoken disapproval. Love wasn't forbidden, autonomy was. 6. Money was used as a tool of emotional power. Beatrix earned her own income, but it wasn't freedom yet. Her parents controlled access to funds, travel permissions, social approval. Financial independence came slowly and painfully. The film shows how success doesn't automatically liberate women, especially in rigid societies. Every step towards independence required negotiation. every choice carried emotional cost. This wasn't oppression by violence, it was oppression by dependency. 7. Norman Warren's death was sudden and historically accurate. Norman Warren died shortly after their engagement. No warning, no long illness, just collapse. The film doesn't dramatize his death with spectacle because real grief doesn't arrive dramatically. It arrives as absence. Warren's death shattered Beatrix's future, not just emotionally, but structurally. He wasn't just love, he was her bridge to the world. That loss forced Beatrix into isolation again, but changed her forever. 8. After his death, Beatrix almost stopped creating. This part of her life is rarely discussed. After Norman's death, Beatrix withdrew socially, questioned her purpose, considered abandoning illustration. The film portrays this as emotional numbness, not melodrama. Grief didn't make her louder, it made her quieter. But something else happened. Her creativity didn't disappear, it redirected. 9. Her art became about stability, not escape. Before loss, Beatrix's drawings were escape. After loss, they became structure. Her stories grew more grounded, more ordered, more gentle. Animals behaved politely, worlds felt safe, rules existed. That wasn't innocence, that was healing. Beatrix Potter didn't write fantasies because she was naive. She wrote them because she needed control over a world that no longer felt safe. That shift defined her legacy. 10. The Lake District wasn't a retreat, it was a rebirth. After Norman Warren's death, Beatrix Potter didn't move to the Lake District to escape grief. She moved there to rebuild herself. The countryside offered something London never did: physical space, emotional distance, independence without permission. The film shows this shift subtly. The air feels lighter, the colors soften, silence becomes peaceful instead of oppressive. This wasn't running away, it was choosing a life where she could exist without constant judgment. 11. Nature became her second language. Beatrix Potter didn't just love nature, she studied it obsessively. She kept detailed journals, made scientific sketches, observed animals with precision. The film hints at this but understates it. In reality, Beatrix was so knowledgeable that she later challenged male botanists, published scientific papers, and anticipated ideas about conservation. Nature wasn't a backdrop, it was where she felt intellectually equal. Animals didn't dismiss her, land didn't patronize her. That respect mattered. 12. Beatrix Potter never fully returned to romance, by choice. The film suggests openness after grief, but history is quieter. Beatrix eventually married, but romance never reclaimed center stage. Her primary commitments became land, work, and legacy. Norman Warren wasn't replaced, he was integrated into her past. Love didn't disappear, it transformed into stewardship. That emotional maturity is rarely shown in cinema, and the film treats it with respect. 13. Financial independence changed her power, not her personality. As Beatrix gained wealth, something interesting happened. She didn't become flamboyant, she didn't seek recognition, she became strategic. She bought land, protected farms, preserved traditional farming methods. The film shows success quietly because that's how she used it. Money wasn't reward, it was leverage. She finally controlled her own choices. 14. The film redefines what a happy ending looks like. There's no triumphant climax, no sweeping romance restored. Instead, there's stability, purpose, peace. Beatrix doesn't win life, she builds one. That ending challenges traditional storytelling, especially for women's stories. Fulfillment doesn't require romance, it requires agency. 15. Beatrix Potter's greatest love story was with the land. After grief, Beatrix didn't retreat into isolation, she redirected love. She bought farms, protected fields, preserved traditional farming methods. The Lake District became her long-term commitment. This wasn't nostalgia, it was responsibility. She treated land the way she treated stories, with care, precision, and respect. That devotion outlasted romance. 16. She became one of Britain's earliest conservationists. Few people realize this.
Beatrix Potter wasn't just an author, she was a conservation pioneer. She bought thousands of acres, protected native sheep breeds, donated land to the National Trust. The film hints at this quietly, but the impact was enormous. Her legacy lives not just on bookshelves, but in landscapes still standing today. That's authorship on a national scale. 17. The film downplays her business genius on purpose. Beatrix Potter was fiercely intelligent in business. She negotiated contracts, controlled licensing, protected her characters fiercely. Peter Rabbit merchandise? That was her idea. The film softens this aspect to preserve tone, but behind the gentleness was strategic brilliance. She wasn't lucky, she was prepared. 18. Miss Potter is radical because it refuses melodrama. Most biopics exaggerate suffering. This film does the opposite. Pain arrives quietly, healing happens gradually, joy appears briefly and honestly. That restraint makes the story more powerful. Life isn't constant drama, it's accumulation. The film respects that truth. 19. The movie was criticized for being too gentle, and that's the point. Some critics wanted more conflict,
Confrontation, more spectacle. But Miss Potter resists that. Because Beatrix's life wasn't loud rebellion. It was persistent resistance. Quiet women still change history, sometimes more effectively. 20. Miss Potter is ultimately about choosing a life, not winning one. The film doesn't end with fame, or romance, or applause. It ends with agency. Beatrix chooses where to live, how to work, what to protect. That choice is the victory, and it's one many stories never tell. Miss Potter wasn't made to dazzle, it wasn't made to shock, and it wasn't made to rewrite history loudly. It was made to listen, to a woman whose voice was softened by her era, but whose impact was permanent. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of cinema's quietest, strongest biographical films, smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because some of the most powerful stories aren't shouted, they're grown slowly. Just like the worlds Beatrix Potter protected.